Welcome to the Get Smart with Money podcast. I'm your host, Dana Hernandez, financial planner and author of Get Smart with Money, Break Free from the Struggle, Build Wealth on Your Terms, and Rewrite Your Money Story. Here we talk about money, entrepreneurship, growth, and resilience, because financial freedom is about more than just numbers. Each week, you'll get practical strategies, inspiring stories, and the motivation you need to stress less about money and create more freedom in your life. Let's get smart with money together. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, I have a very, very special guest. Her name is Elizabeth Meigs of ElizabethInspires.com, where she shares her story of overcoming many hurdles of her life, many of which would have stopped other people in their tracks. Thank you so much for being here today, Elizabeth. I'm very excited to hear your story.
Thank you so much for having me and for this opportunity to share with others, because I know so many people are struggling right now and may feel like they don't really have a way out. I have been there so many times. I was a beautiful, independent 14-year-old girl. I had my whole life ahead of me. I had been a singer-songwriter, singing and performing since the age of 7. In fact, as a toddler, my first words weren't words, it was coming out in a song. So singing was in my DNA. I was very active and popular. I played every sport. Everyone wanted to be my friend, and I always had a boyfriend. I had been in a recording studio that my voice teacher had actually arranged in the spring of my 8th grade year, cutting a demo tape because she saw my talent and she knew that I was going places. In fact, everyone in the small town and area where I'm from knew me for my voice.
Wow.
I was asked to sing and perform different places. I was planning to move to Nashville as soon as I graduated high school, and I was going to make it big in country music. Everything was going full speed ahead to make that dream a reality. Then, one week into my freshman year of high school, my best friend's mom was driving us to the movies. We were traveling down a rural 2-lane highway when all of a sudden we were struck from behind. This sent our vehicle into a tailspin, which then proceeded into a barrel roll multiple times until we finally landed in the field on the opposite side of the highway. With every roll, my head was at the point of impact. My best friend was the least injured. She had a concussion from her mom's bowling ball in the back of the vehicle. She was conscious. She crawled out of the vehicle and found her mom, whose seatbelt had malfunctioned, laying in the ditch. She thought she might be dead. She wasn't, but she did have a broken back and would require multiple back surgeries in order to begin living a life again.
Wow.
My friend ran to the highway, flagged down someone to call 911. The gentleman who hit us was in shock. He didn't do anything. He just sat in his truck. This was in 2000, so not everybody had a cell phone, especially in the rural area where I was from. But luckily, there was a young family who stopped and they called 911. Once the EMTs arrived on the scene, I was cut from the vehicle. My friend had noticed when she came back to the vehicle that I was choking on blood and vomit in my airway and wasn't able to breathe. She had the forethought to keep my airway clear until the EMTs arrived. I had to be resuscitated multiple times at the scene to get me stable to be transported to the nearest rural hospital. Once there, they were prepping me to be life-flighted to the nearest trauma center an hour and a half away by car. My parents got to see me briefly before they wheeled me to the helicopter. I was covered in blood. I had scratches and bruises all over me. My right eye was swollen shut. due to trauma. I was given a very dim prognosis. Once my family arrived at the trauma center, they met with the neurosurgeon and the medical staff. I was given less than a 25% survival rate. They let my family know that I would need to be placed in a drug-induced coma to give my brain and body the best chance of healing. My brain was swelling rapidly. They said, get all your family here that needs to see her because the chances of her surviving are very slim. So we got on a call train or whatever you call where multiple family members are calling other family members to get everyone there. They got me stable. The brain swelling began to go down. Sunday, all of my family who had all been there at the hospital and awake for over 24 hours decided since I was stable, they could go to the hotel. My mom, my dad, my brother, and my sister-in-law stayed with me. It was in the middle of the night on Sunday when my brain began to swell rapidly. Doctors said, this is likely it. Get all your family back here to say their goodbyes. It was in this moment, as the doctors were scrambling to find a medication that would begin reducing the swelling again, that a Calvary Baptist minister walked into the pediatric ICU unit and offered to pray with my family. As they were praying around me, my mom remembers feeling a weight lifted off of her shoulders. She knew in that moment that I was going to survive. It was approximately 1 hour later that the brain swelling began to reduce, and they were able to get me more stable. Prayer is the most powerful thing, and it is the one thing that can make miracles happen. I would remain in this coma for 3 weeks, be taken off of the ventilator right at 2 because I was able to breathe on my own. Once I came out of my coma, I was reduced to that of an infant. I couldn't speak. My vocal cords were so weak from the ventilator, so I would answer questions by blinking my left eye or squeezing my right hand. I couldn't even sit up on the edge of the bed by myself. Therapy would get me in the recliner next to my bed for 30 minutes, and then I would sleep the rest of the day. On September 19th, 24 days after I had been independent and walking around on my own 2 feet, I was able to stand for the first time. Of course, I had therapy staff right beside me because my knees could buckle and give way at any moment. Wasn't able to do it on my own by no means. How much do we all take for granted every day? Being able to walk to the refrigerator to get a glass of milk.
Yeah.
I had absolutely no idea at this point that this moment in my recovery was not going to be the most difficult things that I would ever face. In the week following me standing for the first time, I would then take 3 steps in the parallel bars with the wheelchair right behind me in case my knees gave out. I was then transferred to a subacute rehab unit in the Kansas City, Missouri area where I could get more intensive rehab because at this point they were having to physically lift me from the bed to the wheelchair and I really couldn't do anything on my own. So on September 27th, I was transferred to the rehab unit. Still not really having come to the conclusion that I would never be the girl that I was before this all happened. Or that the darkest moments that would come about in the next 4 to 5 years of my life were just over the horizon. I still had to rely on people to get me in and out of bed in the rehab unit, to and from the bathroom. I couldn't speak still, so I would make my needs known by writing on a whiteboard or blinking my left eye. Now, my voice pretty much defined who I was before this accident, and now I can't even speak. Can you imagine?
No, can't.
43 days after that fateful night, I finally spoke for the first time when my mom entered the room. Of course, my voice was nothing but a whisper, but I said, "Good morning, and I love you." This made my mom smile. This made her so happy because my parents were really wondering if I would ever speak again.
Yeah.
Have you ever been hit with an experience that totally altered your life, left you figuring out who you were?
No.
Or had a situation in your life happen that just left you feeling like you didn't have any way out? As I reflect back on these early days, focusing on my recovery and the gains that I was making each day was what I needed to do. It was hard for me, but my mom was there with me every step of the way, as well as my dad, my brother, and my sister-in-law. But they had to constantly keep pointing out, "Beth, you weren't able to take 3 steps yesterday, and you're taking those today." Or, "You weren't able to transfer yourself from the bed to the wheelchair. Look, you just did it." I've learned over the years, when you're being hit from every which way with nothing but negativity, if you can try to pull out the positives out of every day, because what you focus on is what's going to grow. So I encourage you, when you feel like you're being hit from every angle with nothing but bad stuff, at the end of every day, I want you to think of 3 positives. It's going to be hard in the beginning, but as you do this, it's going to get easier and easier because you're going to see more and more positive because what you focus on grows.
Wow.
Deuteronomy 31 verse 6 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you." During these times, remembering that God is always with you is so important. He loves you, just as he loves all of us equally. But he's asking you to turn to him. He is the one thing that has never failed me. And he's always carried me through every struggle that I have ever faced. On October 13th, after 2.5 weeks of being in the inpatient rehab unit, I was ready for discharge, but I was still in a wheelchair for any long distance, still having to walk with a walker to keep my balance when on my 2 feet. So this was not the end of my rehab. My mom and I would come home for that weekend. I would get to sleep in my bed for 2 nights and then have to turn around and go back to Kansas City, Missouri for a 7-week rehab day program that would be 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, of me getting physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, and then working with a teacher in between my therapies to help me to get caught up on the schoolwork that I had missed from the previous months.
Wow.
I still had no idea that rehab was not going to be the hardest thing that I would ever have to overcome. I would be discharged from that rehab program, finally walking without a walker, no longer requiring a wheelchair right before Thanksgiving. After Thanksgiving break, I would start back in school for half days from Thanksgiving to Christmas. This was when I learned I was going to be faced with the hardest struggles that I would ever face. Back in school, the schoolwork that used to be easy, me getting all A's and B's, was so much more difficult. My mom had to help me with everything. She had to read everything to me. We had to hire tutors to help me get through my math classes. But those weren't the hardest things. Back in school, the life as I knew it was over. My friends' lives had gone on. They were still playing the sports we loved, working their part-time jobs, going out on the weekends, having fun. I was doing therapy after school every day of the week. Schoolwork, working on that every chance I had, every weekend, every evening, with no break, it didn't seem. I was alone. I was isolated. The friends that came and visited me when I was in my coma and in the rehab unit to let me know that they were all still there for me, they didn't seem to care if I was around or not. This is what I perceived anyway. They had no idea how I felt. I also had to deal with judgment because the front part of my skull, the hair had to be shaved for the pressure gauge to monitor the swelling of my brain when I was in my coma. I would require 5 eye surgeries to get my right eye looking somewhat similar to the way it used to. My left arm, I had increased muscle tone, so it would be years before I could extend my arm and open my fingers without prying them open with my right hand. So people who were unaware of the accident and my injury,
Please like, review, share, and subscribe to this podcast, and follow us on Instagram at GetSmartWMoney Podcast, as well as checking out our website at GetSmartWithMoneyPodcast.com.